Welcome to episode 85 of the Brainy Business, understanding the psychology of why people buy. Today's episode features an interview with Radu and Raluca Judele, founders of BrainyTab. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. Today, I am really excited to introduce you to a new browser extension called BrainyTab. With a name like that, you know I was interested in it right away. I will let Radu and Raluca tell you all about it during our interview. If you're near a computer, go to BrainyTab.com and check it out and add the extension to your browser. It only takes a few seconds and it's really cool. There is, of course, a link to BrainyTab and everything else we talk about in the episode in the show notes, which you can find within the app you're listening to or at thebrainybusiness.com/85. If you're already a member of the Brainy Business list, you receive an email from me every Friday with links to all that week's new content, including podcast episodes and new articles. So you can also access the show notes directly from there. If you're not yet on the list and would like to be, simply sign up for any freebie and you'll be automatically added. And for those of you in the States, you can sign up easily by texting the word Brainy, BRAINY, to 33777. You'll be added to the list and get a free copy of my ebook as a thank you. And do know that there is a link to the Be Thoughtful Revolution, the new membership group I announced last week, which is open and waiting for you. There's still room to join the mindset course and all the great stuff that exists. Please do go check that out. And remember to use your code LAUNCH, LAUNCH, so you can get up to 60% off of that membership. It's a totally great deal. It's been so awesome. Thank you to everyone who signed up. It's been so fun so far, and I look forward to seeing you in there too. If you do have questions, you can always email me, melina@thebrainybusiness.com. Okay, I can't wait any longer. It's time to get to this interview. So without further ado, Radu and Raluca Judele, welcome to the Brainy Business Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely. So I am so excited to be able to talk about your new product offering, service, company, extension thing that you have here, which as we know from the intro here is called BrainyTab. And we got connected. I believe, Radu, you reached out to me via LinkedIn and we got connected and started talking about this really cool project that you were working on just a few months ago at the end of 2019. So for everybody that's listening, I would love if you can tell a little bit about yourselves and your background, and then we'll get into what BrainyTab is and how great it is.
Sure. So I'll first start by saying that when I actually reached out to you the first time, I was very nervous because obviously your business is the Brainy Business. And I didn't want to come across as a copycat, like, oh, I'm going to do this thing and I'm also going to call it Brainy. So I was very, very nervous about it. But yeah, about the business, it's a bit of an interesting one in that Raluca and I wanted to work on a project together. This is kind of phase 2 of the wider project that we had. Phase 1 was a browser extension called MyCognitiveBias. And that was inspired by the Cognitive Bias Codex, which you'll be familiar with. And I really wanted a copy of it, and I wasn't sure where I would hang it in the house. Raluca thought that maybe it's a bit too clinical for our house, and we haven't really got the proper home office. So then I was thinking, what's the next best thing to get a constant reminder that the biases are out there? And the browser extension seemed like a reasonable one to do because I still use my laptop a lot. So we wanted to work together on this. So we kind of divided the work in that Raluca did all the research to find the biases, and then we built the extension, and that grew more than we ever hoped. And then we said, actually, maybe there is something there. And it got us thinking about things that might be connected to cognitive biases and might actually help improve decision making. And so the natural step was to go for mental models, which is, I suppose, they're not as well defined as cognitive biases. Some of them might even be a bit debatable. However, we do think that they're very useful. And then something else that was very interesting to us was the growth of dark patterns used everywhere. And this is something that, again, we kind of feel very strongly about, that people should be more aware of them. And whether they choose to go ahead with buying that one thing from the one website that uses it, fair enough, they can go ahead and do it. I think it's just raising awareness of them, hopefully, will make companies use them less. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. And we've been working on it for a while now. And Raluca, is there anything that you'd like to add?
So
Did I miss
first
anything?
of all, you welcome everybody, because probably if I wouldn't have been that stubborn not to get the codex, BrainyTab would not exist. And yeah, we are here. We are overwhelmed with all the positive feedback that we got up until now. And we are trying our best to get to reach at some level where we can be proud. I mean, we are proud of ourselves, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, just looking to grow it now.
Yeah, to grow it. And we'll see. I mean, it's a learning process, and then we'll see at some point where we'll get and what are the steps we need to take.
Well, I hope that you did some proper celebrating. I did a whole episode about the importance of celebration here on the podcast, number 80. So you definitely deserve to be celebrating, both with the launch of, even with MyCognitiveBias and having that move forward, of which, and it's not, I think for those of us in the world, you think about, you're going to create something and, my parents might use it. Mine, maybe not, right? Maybe my parents, a couple friends, I could force my husband to download something. But, hoping that 10 or maybe 25 people are going to find some value. But I know that you had more success than that with MyCognitiveBias. So what sort of numbers of people, you said it exceeded your expectations. So what did you have as far as launching MyCognitiveBias? And then now BrainyTab, when we're doing this interview, for those who are listening, BrainyTab launched 2 days ago, I think, officially in its new form. So I know that probably those numbers aren't in yet, but how many people jumped on MyCognitiveBias?
When we built it, we defined success as having 100 people using it. And we said, if we've got 100 people, because we were building it for ourselves really, right? So we said, look, we're going to put it out there. If 100 people use it, we'll be really happy. We will have learned something and so on. And then we had, I think the most people we had using it was about 3,000 people, which was really, really impressive. But what was even more overwhelming than that was the kind messages that we got from people. And we had messages like, you have no idea how helpful this is. And it was just so nice. Like, we built something that people love. So yeah, it's really, really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so for those who are listening, give a brief explanation of how it works, and not in the technical side of the, behind the scenes of how it works, but what is the benefit that I get if I download the extension of BrainyTab? What's that experience like?
Essentially, it is a new tab browser extension. And what it does, it replaces your default screen. So if you are on Google Chrome, your default screen might have some most visited websites and the search bar. So what we do, we basically replace that screen. And then we give you the option to display either a cognitive bias, a mental model, or a dark pattern every time you open a new tab. Obviously, there are people who learn better by repetition. So we've got an option in there to learn one thing a day. So then in that case, you won't get a random one, but you'll get the same one for a day. And also we've got what I think is a really, really good bookmark manager. And again, I built this for myself really to begin with, because I really wanted that. I like to see my bookmarks when I open my new tab. So we built this, and you can import all your bookmarks from Chrome or Firefox. You can create folders, you can search through them, which I know for sure that Chrome doesn't have, ironically, being a search company. So it's essentially, it takes over your new tab and it teaches you one thing every time you open a new tab.
Right. And that really, what I love about it is it can help with reminders of what some of those biases are. I know that people who listen to the podcast have, they let me know they love hearing about a concept, but our brains are so busy. It's really quick to forget things, especially something you just learned. And so if something comes up and it's availability bias, loss aversion, whatever, those are going to just pop up and you go, oh yeah, I learned about that. And interesting that little tidbit in the way that it's described how it works. Just a quick sentence, a little bit about how that impacts people, and then you can sort of move on and open up the tab as you were planning. Like you said, it still has the functionality of what you want a new tab to do, so you don't get totally sucked down the rabbit holes of the world, as I'm very good at doing myself. But you can then go in and open whatever, your email or whatever you were actually going in to get, which I think is cool. I had access to the beta version before it got started. So I've had BrainyTab on my computer for some time now. And I know that for other people, it's just a really cool way to be able to be reminded of little things, and then even to have new ones that pop up and you think, oh, I haven't heard about that yet, and maybe go look for something else. So I'm going to start with, what are your favorite concepts? Like if you were to pick a couple where they come up and when you were learning about them, you thought they were really cool, as some of the stuff from behavioral science, what are some concepts that you really enjoy?
I think, because I was thinking earlier on about I think I'm saying it correctly, the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
We are using the space repetition technique, and we are trying to help lock the memory into our brain. And there's so much information out there, trying to remember everything and not to forget. And sometimes probably people, they don't even realize they're using this bias, this phenomenon. When you just learn something and then you start seeing it basically everywhere.
Right. Absolutely. That's such one everybody can relate to. We definitely know how that works.
And for me, I think it would have to be loss aversion and kind of like gambler fallacy territory. And funny enough, and I think that the listeners might hopefully relate to this, or I hope it's not just me, but with most biases, it's so much easier to observe them in others. And so you walk around and it's like, he's doing this or she's doing that. And it's just fascinating. And strangely enough, and I think there must be a bias for that, because we know it's the curse of knowledge, isn't it? We're aware of some of these biases and we think, I'm not going to fall for that. I'm smarter than that. And then you do the exact same thing. And Raluca and I, one thing that we learned during this process and learning about biases is that one of the most beneficial things for us was not that we necessarily learned about them and we can apply them. We still fall for them. We still make all these errors. But the really beneficial thing that happened to us was that after we've made all these mistakes, if you want to call them, we don't kick ourselves for making them. It's like, well, I was always going to do that because humans have been doing that for millennia.
Right.
So you basically it just humanizes everyone a little bit, I suppose.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that I've been doing that I love, that I think is the same of why I have the podcast and why you guys have BrainyTab, a lot of that benefit is bringing awareness to things that exist and then helping people to realize when they're doing it. Like you said, not to beat yourself up, but that's where I've made a note. I'm going to link back to the episode on counterfactual thinking. And I've included that next time I'll language to help you move forward. So instead of getting stuck in I can't believe I did that again, that instead can say, oh, okay, I know loss aversion got me this time, but next time I'm going to be on the lookout for it. Or, you're able to identify why your brain is doing something and be able to get out of those patterns potentially. Shining a light on things can have a really positive impact for sure.
Was this the episode where you mentioned your email newsletter? I don't want to spoil it.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yes. So that was one where I sent the big email and it was, hey, name, do you know how important you are to me? And then it actually came through and said, hey, name, do you know how important you are to me? This glitch in tech land that just ruined everything. And it was like, of all the emails that could possibly have this glitch come up, I have since gone through and removed name functionality from every email that I send. So like, I will never do it again. It's just, even though it should work, it's just, so next time I'll just not use that as a benefit or something anymore.
I was listening to that episode driving on my own, and I was just laughing out loud. But it actually motivated me to not even ask for the first name field in most of the forms that we use, because there's not much value. So I just address people, hey friend, and then when we actually do build, because I don't want to make automated emails look like they're personal, because I just don't think it's always right. So yeah, we're just, I don't even ask for that field.
Right. It just is one of those things that when it works, if you can do it and it's done well, it can be really impactful. When your tech is not 100% aligned on those fields, no, then you just look so much worse than if you did say, hey friend, or hey there, right? It's just a little thing that the brain very quickly realizes they don't care about me. They don't know who I am. So so thank you to those who did get the hey name email for sticking with me through that process. That was definitely that is that episode. So we'll link to that in the show notes for this episode, as well as, and we'll have some time at the end where you can talk about ways to find you, but there'll be links to BrainyTab, so you can go download that extension yourself. It's really quick and easy, and I'm obviously a big fan of it, which is why you guys are here. So one other thing that I think is really cool about BrainyTab and just sort of jumping, headfirst or all in on this project from you both is, so neither of you has a background in behavioral science or the biases. You just said, we want to do this. So tell a little bit more about your backgrounds and I guess how we got here.
For me, in kind of complete honesty, it started as a very selfish reason to get into it. So I'm a marketer by trade, and I also spent way too long working in hospitality. So working in hospitality basically was an ongoing experiment in observing human behavior. And it was really, really interesting. And it was back then when I kind of started to understand that there are some patterns, and I didn't really know that they have a name or what the patterns are, but I started to kind of see all these things. Then when I became a marketer, I became interested in behavioral economics and read all of Dan Ariely's work, and obviously Daniel Kahneman and all the great names out there. And initially I was interested in them, like I said, for a selfish reason, and that was for me to become a better marketer. And I'm now a lot more mature. I've never done obviously anything unethical, but I'm a lot more mature now that I want to only use these for good.
Hey, marketing is still good. Let's important interjection here.
It's only because, we've all seen all the hacks and all the tricks that some of the marketers use, and you didn't really convince someone that what you're offering is valuable. You just tricked someone into clicking that one thing to reach your metric. And this is a small percentage of marketers that actually ruin it for everyone.
Right. The clickbait is definitely making it difficult for the rest of us in many ways.
So I kind of became interested in it initially to kind of understand it and understand how I can make it more efficient. But then I genuinely became interested in them. And then about 18 months ago, was it, that Raluca had a mini stroke. And part of the reason why she had it, I'll actually let you tell the brief story.
I think it was obviously stress related. And back then I was a bit upset about it. And I used to say a lot, unfortunately, I had the stroke. And now I look at it as, I had the stroke. And this was such a game changer for me. And I do think that I've been quite lucky first. And then secondly, I've been learning so many things along the way. Obviously, I never thought I'm going to do what I'm doing today. And I'm very grateful to Radu, because I basically plodded along. And
it kind of forced you to try to rewire your thinking and be less stressed.
At the beginning, I wasn't sure, but now I'm kind of like really enjoying everything that I'm doing. And obviously I'm doing so much research, and as like yourself, sometimes you start, from somewhere, and then you get kind of like caught up with other things and you go like, oh, this is interesting. And I would like to learn about this as well. So yeah, it's a learning process for both of us. So yeah.
Right. And I remember when we spoke about this in sort of a the pre-call, you're talking about too, that you were looking for ways to kind of relearn and re-engage your brain after the stroke, right? And so finding some new research and things to help build back some of what you had, as well as then moving beyond in this new outlook, new, less stress life.
Definitely. And I do see myself sometimes falling for some like patterns, but as Radu said, I'm not as upset as before, which is, I think it's a big thing, isn't it? I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And so for you, just to make sure I'm grasping this in the right way, it sounds like where you're saying some of maybe there are some where we're talking about counterfactual thinking, right? Where we can get so caught up in the, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. And you're adding all this extra stress in your own life. And so potentially, in addition to just regular work stress and so much that was going on in life, was it that sort of an outlook was having some of the impact, you think, on your life stress, and then learning about the biases like these and how your brain works helped you to kind of let go of that constant second guessing, things like that?
I think so. I look at myself sometimes as an introvert, obviously. I'm not much of a talker, but with everything that I've been doing, I do feel like I have a bit more confidence.
Yeah, it's been really good for you, hasn't it? You've enjoyed it on a personal level, and you also feel
more than I thought.
You've grown a lot. And the other thing is that we both felt we were never really very heavy social media users, but we did spend a fair amount of time, like a lot of people do. And then we essentially started to make a very conscious effort to use less. We still use it, but just use a lot less. And essentially, we wanted to replace the time that we were using on social media with time that is a bit more useful and helps us grow. And we chose this path because we're both fascinated. We're, again, far from being experts, but we're just very, very hungry to learn. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
For my personal development and growth, I also done a couple of courses, which I think they helped me a lot, and basically putting strategies together and my goals.
Awesome. I was just looking. So I had to go in, and I realized because I hadn't re-upped my BrainyTab from when the launch went, that I had to bring it back. So I'm just, as I was looking here, just to help give sort of the example for those who are listening here, because we can't see it. You'll be able to see it yourself, but you've got this really smart. So when I just re-downloaded, there's this blue circle with kind of a plus sign that's radiating, pulsing, what have you, just saying, add some things over and over to me to add my main sites over to the bar. So, Gmail or whatever I'm using consistently, I can have those quick tabs go in there. But I opened up here, and the first one where I opened a new tab is the clustering illusion. And it says the clustering illusion is the cognitive bias of seeing a pattern in what is actually a random sequence of numbers or events. And then the next one I open up here, I've got essentialism and the Barnum effect and money illusion and illusion of asymmetric insight. And so these are all things I haven't even talked about yet on the podcast. So I know for me, I've actually sort of been making it a really great, we'll say mutually beneficial, symbiotic, whatever relationship, where it opens up and go, oh, I should make an episode about that with each new tab. So I guess you're welcome to the listeners, and thank you to both of you for creating this to help kind of spur ideas for new episodes. But those, they just, like you said, randomly generated come up. How many concepts are you up to now that you have on the tabs? I know that's a Raluca question.
It's around 530.
Dun, 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 so many.
Yeah, I know.
That's awesome, though. That's, you're never going to run out. It'll be a long time potentially before I get back to the clustering illusion. So better remember it now when it comes up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And hoping we will grow with other topics as well.
We're looking into adding, this is kind of a nice segue into...
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Great minds and all, right? So we were kind of conflicted as to what to improve next. What should we do next? And the kind of default thinking that we had was we should add more topics. We should do this and we should do that. And then we kind of very calmly sat down and like, okay, we know what we should really do. And the one criticism of BrainyTab was that maybe it maybe relied too much a bit on Wikipedia. And I think there's pros and cons to that. I think most people will see Wikipedia as a decent enough starting point, but realistically, it doesn't really give a lot of credibility. So we've had a really interesting conversation, and you very kindly agreed to contribute to BrainyTab. So kind of medium to long term, the goal will be to improve the content. And we're looking at doing things like working with very carefully curated contributors like yourself to add more content. In an ideal world, we would absolutely love to not necessarily simplify the definitions, but make them more relatable.
Right.
And we would love to be able to add real life examples for all of them. So the ideal card would then look like what is it and real life example kind of thing. And it should be very digestible. So once we will improve the definitions for these topics, we will be looking at adding a few more topics. And the one rule that we have for ourselves is to only add things that are actually improving decision making. So we're looking at maybe doing things like game theory games and all sorts of things that are somehow related. And also, I suppose that it probably makes sense to also mention that the reason why we went with mental models as well is because we feel that there is a really strong connection between them. And to some extent, and I can't really think of a really good example right now, but to some extent, using mental models can actually help counter some of the cognitive biases. And actually, I do have an example, and apologies for rambling. I do have an example, but essentially, my biggest learning from the cognitive bias is that we're essentially not as rational as we would like to be. So we're very emotional, and then we make a decision, and then we justify the decision to ourselves. So there's a really good mental model that basically forces you to set a goal ahead of time, and you remove the emotion from it. So they use an example of some traders, but they would buy some stock and then they would say, if it goes up to X or down to Y, I will sell no matter what. So then you basically made the decision before you're emotionally invested. So this is a good example of a mental model. So you actually don't allow yourself to get to the point where you might fall for a cognitive bias.
Right. And when you're in that hot state so making the decision in a cold state so that when you're in the hot state, it's not going to be problematic. It's just as difficult to do, I guess, in the trading world for someone who's doing trades in the heat of the moment as it is for those of us when the dessert tray goes by and you think, well, I wasn't going to have any, but yes, having those rules can be really helpful. So for those listening, Radu was talking about, I'm going to be going through now. So the site is live, the extension exists, but you're still going to be updating it all the time. I'm going to be going through that list of 530 something examples and concepts and things, and including for where I already have resources from the Brainy Business podcast or studies that I know that I've read and used in different areas to be able to link those back to strengthen up the citations and things that you have throughout, and as well as just to help make it all more robust. As I've said since the beginning of the podcast and everything, it's really my mission to help as many people as possible to understand how our brains really work and apply that into their lives. And this seemed like such an obvious connection point that I was so excited when I saw it. So I want to thank you both for letting me be a part of the project. It's a really cool thing that you've done and that you're putting together. And I am honored to be a part of that team.
As are we. Thank you very, very much for all the support and all the feedback that you've given us while we build it, and all the kind words and encouragement. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I was just looking at BrainyTab again, which is at BrainyTab.com. So you all can go check that out. And there's this interesting it's basically the entire thing is black and white. This is a very smart use of color theory and things on that way. So you've got black and grayscale for everything on a very white background. There's that blue pulsing circle, like I said, in the bottom, and then something at the bottom on the other side in blue that says competition, win free books. And so that's interesting. Can you tell us about what that is?
Sure. It's our little way. So obviously we're, as you can tell, just kind of husband and wife little project working on this on the side, but we do want to raise awareness of it. And we understand that some people might need a bit of a nudge to share this extension with other people. So we've put together a little competition, and the goal there is to just essentially give some free books to the lucky winners. Hopefully it will incentivize people to share the extension, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, I like books. I'm quite confident we have a listenership full of lifelong learners here as well. So who would also like, so this is $100 worth of Amazon books that you get in this case. So I don't know if that's a set list of books or like a gift card.
Yeah, in true agile fashion, we didn't want to overthink it and do some technology and rules and everything. We kind of rely on people not to abuse it. So when we pick the winner, we'll get in touch. How do you want to do it? We can order it for you and have it shipped, or we'll do the gift voucher or something. I think the important bit there is the value that they're getting. And we do hope that they're getting books.
Right. If you get an Amazon gift card that you're using it for books, essentially. Yeah. So, well, hopefully the learners listening will do that. I think that is exciting and awesome, and just a really great way to add additional value to what you've put together here with BrainyTab. So everyone listening, please do go to BrainyTab.com. Brainy spelled just the way as the Brainy business is, Brainy. I get questions all the time. Do you have people ask you if Brainy is spelled Brainey? Have you had that question?
Never did, no.
Never come across that.
I have to say it all, and so I don't know if you all have or are changing to where you'll have, email addresses or things that are at BrainyTab.com, things like that. So my email, obviously, is one that has at thebrainybusiness.com, and explaining that over the phone to people, and they, it's how do you spell that? What is Brainy EY? It's interesting to learn, again, that's maybe not a word that we think or say enough. So I'm glad that we're bringing that more into the world now.
To us, that was the obvious spelling. English is not our first language, but that was the spelling.
It is right. Yes, it is correct. That's where that, but I think it's just not a word that people before us, that people are putting into the world all that often. So hopefully we'll be changing that with the Brainy business and BrainyTab and great stuff. So there will be links in the show notes, as I already said, to BrainyTab, and you can just go to BrainyTab.com and get that extension. It takes all of 3 seconds, I think, to get that added on. And you do have a dark mode for those who like that as an option. And then you can add in your favorite sites and everything, and it's super functional, and you get to learn a little something, which I love.
Amazing.
Anything else? Any final thoughts that we need to throw in there? Or
no, I guess we've just been overwhelmed with support, and we've had a lot of really, really nice messages, and a lot of people that use MyCognitiveBias have now migrated to BrainyTab. It's really, really nice. It's just kind of we've been having amazing feedback, and it's really encouraging, and it's giving us the strength to continue. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for being on the show, and hopefully we'll be adding a few more users to BrainyTab here very soon.
Thank you, Melina.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. How cool is that? I know you love learning about your brain because you're here with me, and now you can do so every time you open a browser tab. Just go to BrainyTab.com, which you can access through the link in the show notes if you prefer, and in just a few clicks, you'll have your extension. I will also give a little plug for them as someone who knows how important ratings and reviews are. With the new launch, they had to start clean, and that means no ratings. They didn't ask me to talk about this, but I know I added one in there for them and a review to show some BrainyTab love. And if you're willing to, I know Radu and Raluca would appreciate it very, very much. And when you do get your extension at BrainyTab.com, don't forget to sign up to win $100 in free books. How awesome and generous is that? Radu and Raluca, thank you again for being on the show and sharing your vision with the world and for being such genuinely kind people. I'm glad to know you and to have helped share BrainyTab with the world. And just like that, Episode 85, an interview with Radu and Raluca Judele on BrainyTab is done. Next week, we are going to do another behavioral economics analysis of a company, Peloton. It's going to be a lot of not so controversial fun. You won't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Molina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.